Hey, how y'all doing out there? Remember, an educated and attentive, united public cannot be controlled. Be proactive. Learn to be active. I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Yeah. Woke up. I ain't feeling your side.
King Chuck ENT. Y'all can check out the music on Spotify, Apple, and other services.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? KCE. King Chaka. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? KCE. King Chaka.
Is the devil God in a ski mask? How y'all doing out there? How y'all feel? Remember, an educated and united public cannot be controlled. Learn to be active. Code switching for survival. Global revolution. That's what we're talking about today. Really hope y'all can hear me. Let me check. Okay. It really sucks when I don't have anybody else in here because I can't tell, but looks like everything's going fine. I do this out of love. I'm compelled to do this. How did it feel to see me in the ski mask? Kind of scary. Is the devil God in the ski mask? What is code switching? And why do some people have to do it for survival? I was brought to tears in class last week because a guy was telling me a story about from where he was from. He lives in a border town and he has to code switch for survival, literally, because the people in the South speak a different language than the people of the North. And it's like they hate each other. So he speaks both languages and he's basically from both cultures. He goes to a bar and he's speaking, let's say, French, and then some people overhear him speaking French with his friends, and then they want to come cause problems. They want to come beat them up or whatever, talk mess to him. He goes down south. He speaks. He and he's speaking, let's say, Dutch, and he's outside with his friends talking, and then somebody comes by and they hear him speaking the language, and they want to come beat him up, cause him problems. So when you're in a situation like that, it's like you're extremely sensitive to your environment. You're extremely sensitive to the sensibilities of others, facial expressions, body language, you know, just the energy, the vibe, and you adjust quickly, you know, and you portray yourself in a way that keeps you from having problems, basically. Okay. Um, those that a lot of people do this without even thinking about it. It's a thing that you just do. Because again, like I say, for some of us, we do it for survival. So the reason why when he told this story, it brought me to tears is because it made me think about myself. I feel like, I can fit in anywhere, but I don't fit in anywhere. Not really. Because the way I portray myself is depending on the circumstances and the situation of what I feel is needed. Like the real me, the real true me, the relaxed, honest me is rarely seen because that guy isn't accepted anywhere. You know, that's part of the reason why I do this show is because it's like therapy for me. It helps me to clarify my philosophy or clarify my way of thinking or, you know, having a safe place to express my thoughts, you know. And I know I say a lot of things that get people very upset, even to the point where they might want to come and touch me. I'm not afraid. I'm compelled to do this. God has put this on my heart. So if you come and kill me, I'll be a martyr. So I'm not afraid. I feel that I'm walking with God and I'm doing God's work. So whatever consequences come as a result of it, I'll take them. You know, I, I feel like this is what my calling is. Okay. I don't make any money from doing this. I don't expect this show to ever get millions of views. You know, I don't even expect to reach a lot of people. There's only some, the universe aligns, you know, it's the year of 7 and the universe aligns. And those that are supposed to hear this will hear it. Those that are supposed to feel this will feel it. It is what it is. Of course, they would come around and start blowing leaves around this time. I hate that machine. I freaking that blower that they use. I really dislike it. It's like a distortion. It's like a anyways. So code switching for survival. So for those that don't understand, I'm gonna read a little bit of an article to kind of explain it. But before I get into it, I want to make a point. Okay. Um, for those of you who have the privilege of not knowing what code switching is and not really having to do it, I want to give some examples. So, like, it's really heavy and deep I'm not going to have time to go all the way into it, but let's talk about it a little bit. So, you know, names on applications. Okay, let's start there. You know, you have a lot of uh, Asian folks who are here in the United States, and they tend to name their child Tom, I don't know, um, regular, like acceptable names. You know what I'm saying? uh, I don't know, regular names like Joe, um, Ted, stuff like that. And if you think that that doesn't mean anything, then you don't understand how this world works and how the reason why they do these things, okay? Because let me show you a screen. I'm gonna share screen right quick. This is popular Japanese baby names, Japanese girl names. Himari, Sumuji. Forgive me if I'm butchering these because I cannot speak. Himari means sun, and Sumuji is hand spun yarn from damaged cocoons. Another one is Rin, it means companion. Mei, a dance. Oi, hollyhock. Hina, greenery. Mioi, heart, sun. Rico, jasmine, truth. Yun, Yuina, Tai, Ban, and An, which is apricot. These are popular Japanese girl names. Let's do some popular Japanese boy names. Rin means lotus. Haruto means fly or sunlight. Aioi, bluish. Itsuki, tree. Minato means harbor. Asahi, morning sunlight. Oi, vivid color. Hiroto, big flight. Ritsu, law. Dan, sandalwood tree. So, wherever you are, the place that you work or the school that you're in, and there's maybe some Japanese people that are in your class or at your job, how many of them have names like Tom or I don't know, I can't even think of regular examples like I don't know, Harry, uh, Mike. Now you wonder why would they do that? These are beautiful names. They have meaning to. Let me go. I'm going to share some Chinese names. Um, Popular Chinese names. Okay, so popular Chinese names here. Boy names. Muchin. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this stuff, y'all. Hao Yo, Mingze, Yichin, Yuze, Harwan, Yize, Yu Yuxan, Muyang for girls, Roxt, Yino, Yina, Zina, wait, Zihan, Yimo, Yutong, Zingyi, and some of them repeat. Again, you have friends in your class or at your job, and they are Chinese, how many of them do you know have some names like these? Okay, there may be a few. I'm willing to bet though that the majority of them have regular, like American, if you will, acceptable names. Okay, and there's a reason why they do that. Okay, my name is Chaka. It means king ruler. South African. A lot of people will be like Chaka Khan. Okay, that's fine. It's still pretty much the same. The meaning is king ruler. Okay. Um, but putting that name on a resume is a problem. Okay, for getting a job, or it's like the comments that people make, or whatever. Like, where are you from? Like, why did your parents give you that name? If my name was Tom or something, we wouldn't even have that conversation. They wouldn't ask me where I'm from, and they wouldn't ask me why did my parents give me that name. Okay, understand it's related to the dominant culture deciding on what's acceptable and what is not. Okay, that leads me back to code switching. So code switching for survival. So for these parents want their children to have a chance in life, have a chance to be successful, have a chance to, open or run a business, or, work a job that pays decently. Um, so they give them those names like that, even though the names like have no meanings, and it's like they're losing their culture a bit by having these names. They're willing to sacrifice their culture and sacrifice that their name has a meaning so that their child can have an opportunity. Now, why do they do that? Why is it that if my name is Tom, or I don't know, Joe, I have a better shot in life than if my name is Chaka or Quinn or some other name? Let me read a bit of this. It says, what is code switching? Understanding the impact of code switching for racial ethnic minorities. What exactly is code switching? This is Kayan O'Connor, PhD. I don't know what the Psychology Today is what it's from. It says, what exactly is code switching? Many of us may do it and not even realize it. Others may have never heard this term before. Some others may not acknowledge it as a real thing. Usually, groups in the latter category don't acknowledge it because they never had to engage in it. The privilege of being able to ignore the strategies others must engage in just to be allowed entry into common spaces is something that many take for granted. My goal in this article is to talk about what code switching is, how it affects the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community, and my views about how to move forward from here. The definition of code switching has not been static and has changed over time, along with many other social constructs. In this article, I focus on cultural code switching that involves the suppression of multiple aspects of one's cultural identity, which can include type of clothing worn, hairstyle, speech, or behavior. In the broadest sense, code switching involves adapting the presentation of oneself in ways that disconnect them from the cultural or racial stereotypes of their group. The goal being to enhance the comfort of others, typically those outside of their cultural or racial group, in hopes of receiving equal treatment and opportunities for advancement. Code switching is a strategy used by individuals who identify as BIPOC, who often find it necessary to effectively navigate professional settings. I don't like that acronym, but whatever. There are multiple examples of code switching. For example, when a person considers each morning before getting dressed for work or school whether their traditional cultural garments will be viewed as acceptable, whether wearing a turban, hijab, or bindi will be off putting to their colleagues or supervisors, or whether their natural hair, afro, dreadlocks, braids, etc., will be seen as unprofessional. Code switching also involves adapting with aspects of themselves that may not be as easily identified. In academic and professional settings, many in the acronym community are likely familiar with the term Oreo. And no, I'm not talking about the cookie, but what the cookie represents, black on the outside and white on the inside, the use of a white voice, and other Western Eurocentric ways of speaking, being, and engaging to fit in with non Hispanic white society. Acronym community members are more likely than their non Hispanic white counterparts to say they feel the need to code switch. In a study conducted in the Pew Pew Research Center 2019, they found that overall 4 in 10 Black and Hispanic adults often feel the need to change the way they talk around others of different races and ethnicities, especially among non Hispanic whites. Interestingly, the group most affected are Black college graduates under the age of 50, where 53% of the group report feeling the need to switch how they express themselves when they are among people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds. Unfortunately, we don't have recent data on the acronyms groups, but research suggests we would see similar findings. Excuse me. Further code switching is likely significantly underreported. Why? Because admitting to code switching can sometimes create tension between an individual and members of the cultural group with they most strongly identify. And second, many of us begin code switching unconsciously without thinking about it, without realizing it's happening. According to a Harvard Business Review 2019, code switching most often occurs in environments where negative stereotypes about acronym individuals don't align with what is considered normative or appropriate for that environment. This is most commonly in academia and in places of employment. Many have argued code switching is one of the key dilemmas that acronym employees face. I am sure we can all agree that the workplace setting requires some degree of code switching for everyone, including non acronym employees. All of us likely have had to switch some aspects of our personalities, tone of voice, and clothing choices between the home and the office, depending on workplace culture and expectations. Some might even say that this phenomenon is really about being professional and has nothing to do with race. Let's ponder this point for a moment. Who decides what is professional and what is unprofessional? Who decides whether an afro or dreadlocks are unacceptable for certain environments? Where do we get messages that cultural or traditional clothing is improper and potentially offensive? I suggest that what we as a society consider to be acceptable and professional in academia and places of employment is largely based upon the standards set by the non Hispanic white majority. Thus, the conversation about code switching cannot occur without our recognition of the role that systemic racism, or the racism that is embedded as normal practice within society or an organization that inherently marginalize people of color, plays in this phenomenon. Often it is the majority non-Hispanic white cultures that sets the standard by which all others are judged. Many don't recognize this as a serious concern that should be addressed and discussed. If acronym employees did not feel they would be discriminated against, treated differently, viewed as inferior or less intelligent by their colleagues due to behaving, dressing, and speaking in a manner that aligned with their cultural identity, there would be no compelling reason to engage in code switching, and we would not have to be having this conversation. Some may say that it sounds like code switching is a strategy for success. And perhaps the act of code switching in and of itself is not necessarily bad. However, when people feel forced to code switch in order to prosper in academic or work environments, it can have it can have negative consequences. Downplaying one's membership in their racial, ethnic, or cultural group can lead to tensions within group members, leading to negative interactions with peers being called white or an Oreo, or claims that the people who you really care about don't know who you really are. Consciously avoiding race based stereotypes is hard work, and needing to maintain that attentiveness at all times can be emotionally taxing. I am optimistic that one day we will live in a world where being one's authentic self in organizational environments does not come at the potential cost of success and upward mobility. There are strategies organizations can take to begin reducing the need for code switching and the negative consequences acronym employees face as a result. So then she goes into a list of things that do. It says organizational assessment, diversity and inclusion. Leaders can set the standard. The acronym employees be strategic. Data, 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 data. The reason why I wanted to cover this is because I want people to understand that this kind of thing is a real thing and it really does affect people. Um, and a lot of people don't believe that it is. And that's where it comes in, where people talk about, it's like, when I've been unplugging, so I haven't been watching very much news and stuff. Um, but I saw something where it was like, racially motivated fight or something, and it's all catching the news, and they're like, oh, they call this person a N-word or something like that, and all of this and all of that. And then it's like, they really make a big deal out of that or whatever. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But when I think about racism, I think about systemic racism, okay? Um, this is the thing where people say, I don't see color, they say racism is over or that it doesn't exist or whatever. And then what I point to is things like this one right here, where you have groups of people who have to code switch so that they can feel like they have an opportunity, okay? So that they can feel like they can move forward. Where people have to, it's it's systemic, okay? It's systemic racism, okay? That is real and that is actually harmful, okay? When they say that everybody has equal opportunity, that is not true. It's just simply not true. You know, you have a system already set up for certain groups of people to, you know, get an easier ride, if you will, because their natural culture or their culture that they have been embedded in is the, let's say, dominant one. Therefore, you know, they don't have to code switch. They don't have to give their kids names that they wouldn't normally. They don't have to dress different. They don't have to do their hair in a different way. They don't have to speak in a different way. You know, they don't have to fake, you know, they can't be themselves. Okay. So if they're in a situation where they can't be themselves, then there goes the systemic racism that's going on, the, you know, pushing certain groups to the periphery, if you will, uh, it's like, and if you want to be not outcasted, if you want to be within, then you have to conform. Is that what they like to say? Um, you have to conform to the dominant culture, if you will, or, and they're like, oh, they won't conform, so then you have to push them out. So then who's the ones who gets to decide this? Who gets to decide what is acceptable and what's not? So then, like, okay, depending on the country, then it's like, okay, then you have to be Christian. So, and if you're not Christian, then you're not conforming. So you're pushed to the periphery, or you have to be Muslim. You're not Muslim, then you're pushed to the periphery, or you have to be Hindu. And if you're not Hindu, then you're pushed to the periphery. Okay? Then, or Jewish or whatever. And then how many of these people are dressing up in these costumes, is what I call it, and pretending just so that they can go along to get along, just so they can get by? How many people wear the Hanukkah just so that they can walk the streets and not be bothered, and they don't care one way or the other? They're probably secular. A lot of these people are, and they, say, okay, yeah, whatever the greetings are, alhamdulillah, or assalamu alaikum, or, God is good all the time, Jesus saves, or um, shalom. They say these things, and they maybe wear a costume, and that helps them get by. But when they go home at the end of the day, they're not reading the Quran, or they're not reading the Bible, or they don't go to church, or the Sabbath. They don't really worship. I'm doing this because I want us to, like, I study anthropology, and I've been compelled to go down this road, and I compare different cultures, and because I do that, I can see the inconsistencies, I can see the flaws, I can see where we are pretending, you know, and I'm looking for, I feel it in the air, it's the year of 7, global revolution, you know, um, where people hopefully at some point can get to the point where they don't scrutinize somebody, because they have a different religion, or they have a different skin tone, or they have a different gender, or they have a different um, sexual attraction or whatever. Like, I mean, the idea of who is irredeemable. So once you decide that a certain group is irredeemable, then this gives the excuse for eradication. This gives the excuse for sterilization. This gives the excuse for locking them up, putting them in prison, or shipping them away, or not allowing them into your country, stopping them at the border, allowing them to drown off on a boat because they're trying to come in and you don't want them here, mass shootings, mass stabbings, bombings, war, you know that's where this is coming from. Okay, it's intolerance. I have a academic code switching paper. I think I want to read a little bit of that one. Can I share this? Give me a second, because it's not under the same web page. Can I do it? It's not popping up because so what I'll do is I'll just pull it up. Can y'all hear me? I'm gonna pull it up and just read it. This is a PDF. This is from academia. It's called Code Switching. It's written by Mary Kay Keller, published 2020. And let's read a little bit. So this is from the academic point of view. definitions and terminology. It says, even though code switching is the most common term for alternate use of two linguistic systems within the same conversation, other terms have been used as well. They include terms such as code mixing, code shifting, code changing, code alteration, language mixing, and borrowing. Different authors have defined it in different ways. The definition range from a fairly simple to the more sophisticated, depending on whether researchers perceive code switching as a random or rule-governed phenomenon, and also on the perspectives from which they approach its study. Some focus on its social and pragmatic characteristics, while others are more interested in the structural aspects. The differences thus stem from the competing theories and models briefly discussed in this chapter, and from the fact that same terms used by different authors often refer to quite different concepts. Let me see. I didn't get to read this, so on the one hand, we find very broad definitions of code switching that cover more or less all form of language contact phenomenon: linguistic borrowing, insertion, transference, convergence, importation, and the like. On the other, those that narrow code switches to more discrete categories that exclude certain types of bilingual discourse. Among those who use code switching as an umbrella term, we find Bantahila and Davis, 1983, Mayer Scott in 1993, and others. These authors are the ones that distinguish between intrasentential and intersentential switches, intra and inter. The former occurring within a single sentence at the level of a phrase, clause, or even word, and the latter over a longer chunk of discourse between sentences. Some others use the term code switching exclusively for intersentential switches and refer to intrasentential switches as code mixing, as only the last term requires the integration of mixing of the rules of the two codes involved. It seems that the two most important dichotomies therefore exist between code switching and borrowing on the one hand, and between code switching and code mixing on the other. So, in this is academic, and they're kind of focusing on the language part of it, which is cool, but it's not just language. Your culture is your culture, and it's like the way you stand. you know um you could be speaking the same language, but it's the way you say the words. It's like the difference between Puerto Rican Spanish and Mexican Spanish. You know what I'm saying? The difference between Spain Spanish and you know Mexican Spanish. The difference between English spoken in the UK versus English spoken in the Americas. Okay. And it also has to do with, like I say, the way you carry yourself, and when you're under these certain pressures, it forces you to adjust. Okay. Like I say, code switching for survival, you're forced to adjust, the way you move, the way you live, the way you dressed, literally for because your life depends on it. Your livelihood depends on it. So what I'm suggesting here is that people, the ones that don't have to code switch, try to recognize, try to make people feel more comfortable in their own skin. you know don't ridicule them because they have a name that you don't recognize or whatever. It's not normal. Don't ridicule them because the way they dress is not what you would consider normal. Don't ridicule them because they have a different religion for you, like they worship different from you, like or they choose to not, they say that they don't have a religion. Like, let's say that they're atheists. Don't ridicule them for that. We're all the human family. Okay. And educated, united public can't be controlled. They are separating us into all of these categories, and they keep us fighting with each other. Meanwhile, the status quo continues, and we are all suffering. So there's a suffering that happens that comes along with privilege. I don't think that people really understand that, but the haves and the have-nots, they're both suffering. Okay. The person who is struggling, the one who is living in the hood, the one that is hungry all the time, they're struggling. Okay. And they're suffering. And then you have a different kind of suffering that happens for the ones that are the haves, the ones that have to deal with certain things that are very stressful, like the pressures that's on them. Okay. The haves and the have-nots both are suffering. We're all suffering. We're one human family. And if we can recognize that, well, let me say this. Okay. Uh, you know some people suck. Like, humans suck, right? People suck, right? It'd be like, white people suck, and they'd be like, black people suck too. It's just in different ways. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, Hispanic people suck too, but in a different way. You understand what I'm saying? The this You can't judge one person's suffering versus another's. Like, how saying one tragedy is more worse than another. Like, who are you to make that determination? How do you come to the point to decide on what is worse? Okay. It's all based on your perspective, your own personal point of view. Okay. With your limited knowledge, with your limited experiences, with your limited linguistic abilities. Okay. So, same thing with the religions. You deciding, that my religion is the one and true religion, and I worship God, and the ones that aren't in this religion don't, and they are not. They're worshiping the devil. You know, I know I'm losing y'all. I know I'm rambling. I know I'm not gonna reach anybody. I mean, it is what it is. You know, I'm not. These things are hard. Like I said in the other video, you know, the programming was done in a violent way. Okay, so it took violence for them to get you to think the way that you think right now. Okay, for you to have the perspective that you have. So the only way to fix these things is mentally, and it's gonna be violent. It's gonna be painful. It's gonna hurt. Okay, it's gonna hurt. It has to. That's the only way for you to break free of the shackles, to break free of the programming. Okay? It's hard. It's impossible, really, you know? But I'm gonna try. We're gonna try. We have to. For the sake of humanity, okay? I'm doing this because I care, okay? So you're not gonna agree with everything that I say. I'm gonna say some things that are gonna get on your feelings. Okay? So, but if I said something that got on your feelings, just know I don't know who you are. I don't know you. Okay? So, if I said something that got on your feelings, then that's something that you have to deal with within yourself. Why? Why am I feeling this kind of way behind this thing that this guy is saying? Oh, what he's saying is not true. Is that the reason why I'm feeling some kind of way? You need to deal with that within you. I don't know who you are. I'm not attacking you. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm only on the side of truth, justice, integrity, you know, the universe, the cycles. what is best for everyone, for us to all flourish. We're at a crossroads in humanity. We might not make it, you guys. Y'all worried about the planet. The planet's gonna be fine. It's been here before us. It'll be here after us. Will we make it? That's the question. That's what y'all need to think about. Anyways, I got a comment here. Is it BS? Somebody says, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you. I don't want to cry on here. But code switching is something I have to do for survival. And I can fit in anywhere, but I don't fit in anywhere. It leaves me completely alone. So those that feel like me, peace and love. Thank y'all for listening.